New to Sophie Lark and don't know where to start.
Let's discuss the Sophie Lark book talk drama. So I wasn't going to make a video about this topic only because it seemed quite obvious, to me at least, who was in the wrong in this situation. I've since seen multiple videos where people are defending Sophie Lark.
Do I think that she's a racist? Absolutely not. No, she's not a racist.
What she's done is not wrong. Now let's strip off any culture, any colour.
I see nothing wrong in that little paragraph that it's floating all over TikTok.
I'm going to do what I've done in the past, give you the facts. You can come to your own opinion. I'll share mine as well. Granted, you probably already know a fair bit about this story.
Just saw that both the deluxe versions of Sparrow and Vine with sprayed edges are on sale right now.
Popular romance author Sophie Lark has a book coming out, had a book coming out. It was called Sparrow and Vine. It has since been pulled by the publisher Bloom Books. We'll get to them in a second. I said that this was a book talk drama, and it very much is, but it also started on Threads, which, who uses Threads? Use Blue Sky, use Blue Sky. But anyways, users were calling out this upcoming release and pointing out some of the problematic language in it, certain lines that they felt were perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The two quotes from this book that you've probably seen already are the one where the main male character makes a rather tasteless joke, I presume, about immigrants, saying a crew of people with questionable visas. And then the female main character's sister seems to be like an ardent supporter of Elon Musk, and I'll put that quote up. This was the Elon Musk quote that the sister says, "I was inspired by Elon Musk. I use his 5-step design process." No idea what that is. Something exploitation, something misinformation, probably. These rather insensitive quotes prompted others to actually take a look into Sophie Lark's catalogue of her previously published work to see what else they could find. This Goodreads review from last year has become quite infamous, where someone pointed out that another one of her books has this very troubling quote about reenacting a master-slave situation in an interracial couple. He can be my master and I'll be his slave if that's what it takes to get him back again. And then lots of violence to do with the belt, the black female character being brutalized by this white man. It's not great, is it? And here's another offensive quote from a different book. "It was extremely unexpected, like an alliance between Israel and Palestine, or cats and dogs." Just gross. Like, why? Why put that in your book? And what I find even more egregious about this latest book is she had sensitivity readers. She had people. She is this established as an author in the genre that she was able to afford sending advanced reader copies to people who could check for things that were insensitive, flagged them up, then did nothing, didn't take their advice. I have a sneaking suspicion that the publisher, Bloom Books, already had an idea of her track record and her tendency to say these edgy sort of tasteless remarks in her books, and they thought, oh, okay, how about you get some sensitivity readers for this one so that we can potentially troubleshoot any of these things before they get noticed by a larger audience. But of course, if Sophie Lark has final say on the edit, she denies it outright. She doesn't. She lets all of these things carry through, which, I feel like she knew what she was doing. So as Sophie gets into more and more hot water with this situation, as she is raked across the proverbial coals of bookish internet circles, she issues an apology. First on her Instagram, it's also on her TikTok. Something I find very strange about this person, I was not familiar with this author prior to this drama. She uses the third person to refer to herself. A statement from Sophie, but it's her page. Why wouldn't you just put my statement? And I've seen this in some of her videos as well.
New to Sophie Lark and don't know where to start.
She refers to herself as Sophie, and I find that very strange. But anyways, you all notice that comments have been turned off on this apology, which never a good sign. PR team, what are you doing here? If this was her, what a way to create a one-sided monologue. Like, you're not taking accountability if you're not going to be receptive to the things that your audience could potentially put in your comment section. You know what I mean? Like, that's strike one. Strike two would have to be the very inane wording of this apology itself. It's over several slides, but it starts with this sort of nothing burger of a response. And then she says, "It's been brought to my attention that certain lines in Sparrow and Vine were hurtful." You have to be incredibly naive to not already pick up on that. Like, really? It's kind of putting forth that, like, Hanlon's razor of, like, I wasn't being cruel, I was just stupid. And it's like, either way, you don't come across too great. She mentions here as well that her intent was to make a flawed main character, and that's why it was, like, a part of fleshing out their less desirable qualities, making them say these offensive things, which is a contradiction, first of all, because you said earlier that, like, you weren't aware that these were hurtful things, but clearly you did know. But also, we can have this conversation because there are people on Book Talk, at least, who are saying, like, oh, you know, you're allowed to have bad stuff in books, racism exists, you can't just purge it from literature. But that's not really what's happening here. Like, this wasn't an instance of, like, oh, the writer giving us a cautionary tale about racism and informing us as a reader. It was more like, it feels more like a smattering of the author's own personal views. Like, we're kind of seeing behind the curtain at things that she's, like, peppered through. She goes on to say, "I wrote this back in the summer of 2024, and a lot has changed in the world since then, particularly in regard to the fate of immigrants worldwide and certain public figures." And I would just say, 2024, like, that wasn't, it's not even been a year. You know what I mean? Like, that's a very lukewarm excuse. Like, you're really going to say, like, oh, it's a completely different world now. Like, sure, a lot has happened, but I think it's never been easy to be an immigrant, and I don't think it was ever okay to be singing the praises of Elon Musk. Like, he hasn't suddenly become this villain. He's always been quite terrible. And I love as well in the first paragraph, "Please don't blame Bloom for my mistakes." To me, that is such a dog whistle of the publisher just breathing down her neck, saying, like, say it wasn't us. Say that we told you to take these things out. Like, I don't know if the publisher comes across too well in this either. And then she mentions some steps to reparation, which, hey, I'll say this, that's more than some of these toxic authors and creators do when they put up their fake apologies. But let's see if she actually puts action to any of these words. And of course, I'm a white person. Her apology is not mine to accept. I don't want to take up any space in this conversation about race because obviously I'm not one of the affected parties. But I am giving the scoop, and I do have opinions, and they are mostly against Sophie Lark, to be honest. The racist quotations especially were quite frustrating because, especially at the moment, lots of creators have pointed out how the third book in the Legendborn cycle has just been released, and it seems like so many bookshops are not really giving it the, like, respect that it's entitled to. Like, it's not, I don't even think they sent out advanced reader copies for it. It doesn't get, like, pride of place at the front of bookshops, even though this is a popular series. And just last month, all the bookshops were doing a big song and dance for the third book in the Empyrean series, as if Rebecca Yarros isn't also a problematic character. It's just an interesting comparison. You sort of mentally think, like, what's the motivation behind them pushing and pulling certain IPs? I almost forgot to mention as well that her previous cover artist came forward and mentioned the fact that they were, like, unfairly dismissed as the designer for the covers in her book series, but then Sophie Lark also expected them to come back on if they worked, like, longer hours for less money. So even if you have the willful ignorance to refute any offence caused by her quotations in her books, this is very unprofessional. But either way, the book has been pulled. What do you think about this whole situation? Are you team Sophie Lark? Are you team anti-Sophie Lark? Let me know in the comments, and keep it classy.